You are tuned in to a Fireside chat with Zany Mystic. Join us now on another exciting metaphysical journey. Relax, tune in, drop out, and take a seat by the fire as we explore new realms and possibilities. This is Magenta Pixie. You can find me at magentapixie.weebly.com. But now, here is Zany Mystic and guest. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Fireside Chat with Zany Mystic. I am both the Zany Mystic, also known as Lance White, or you could reverse those. Tonight, my guest is Mark Borax. In 1987, Mark witnessed the harmonic convergence, the astrological event sparking the 25-year countdown to 2012, the year that marks the end of history according to the Mayan calendar. He continues a soul-searching journey to understand the world-changing significance of 2012, and in the process gives us a vision of the future that is as hopeful as it is radical. Mark is a Soul Level Astrologer who has written a wonderful new book, and it's called 2012, Crossing the Bridge to the Future, which describes the author's 7-year apprenticeship to the extraordinary teacher, and I might be mispronouncing this, Ellias Lonsdale. Under the redwoods in Northern California, they created a mystery school which birthed a new form of astrology called Star Genesis that helps people contact their core nature and their life purpose. So let's welcome Mark to the show now. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Great. It's nice to be on the air with you.
Oh, good. Well, you know, I feel like I know you from reading that book because it was such a poetic and beautifully written journey. I mean, it took me in, and I relived all my youth and my quest and the thirst for knowledge and the soul's desire to know and to find a teacher, and it's just so beautifully written. And then all of a sudden you get these wonderful nuggets, and it's just a terrific book.
Thank you. Yeah, I tried to write it in such a way that I could bring the full mystical experience and the teachings of spirit into the form of a true story of my life, so that the book is intended to reach readers wherever they are in their own life, and it sounds like it worked with you.
It worked beautifully. It works on many levels, and you know, I wrote my own book, Tales of a Zany Mystic, a couple of years ago, and it's in that book I bare my soul and talk about, you know, my dark night of the soul, which probably is a little darker than yours. But I love how you weave your romantic interests into it, and you don't leave anything out that is necessary to the story, and it's just so beautiful. I mean, it's you know, it's like waves. You ride the waves, and then there's just this wonderful wave, and you ride into the shore, and then you take us back out again. And I just loved your book. I think you accomplished what you set out to do.
Well, it took me many years to write it, and I put everything I had into it, which was kind of a grueling experience of many rewrites. What I find, Lance, with writing about spirit is that unless I become the teachings on the spot while I'm writing in a living way, I find the material ends up being too dry for me or preachy. And I wanted the full, poetic, colorful, sensory experience of how to bring these spirit mysteries down to earth.
Yes, that's exactly how I felt about writing my own book. You know, I mean, in fact, you're probably like me in that you let it set for a while, and then anything that you didn't like, that didn't appeal to you as you reread it, you just struck it out.
Many times.
Many times, yes.
I don't even want to tell you how many drafts that book had.
Oh, I believe you. I know exactly what the process is like. It's much worse than giving birth, although I don't remember having done that. I'm sure in past lives I probably have.
Yeah, it's similar. It feels similar to giving birth, and
yes.
the story that I had to tell, I wasn't even sure what it was myself until I had gone through several drafts of years of writing and then got it to the publisher. And my first editor was the publisher himself, which really pointed me in the right direction as far as what the story actually was that was trying to be born through all of that process.
Well, I have to commend you both because you did a fantastic job on it, and I highly recommend this book to all the listeners. So it's you know, at any level, it's a great read, but especially for those people who are interested in 2012, in the mystical journey, in spirit. I mean, it covers so many different things. And one of my favorite topics, well, I don't know if you can actually call it a topic, but one of my favorite experiences that I see on the horizon is the 2012 event window. And I'm hoping that we can kind of segue into that because that is the title of your book. If you can share some of your experiences about what you've learned about this period of time that we're in, astrologically or otherwise.
Yeah. We studied in our mystery school that I wrote about in my book almost 20 years ago. We studied the time period between 1987 and 2012. 1987 was the harmonic convergence event, which I look at as ushering in a 25-year cleansing or purging period. And when we first began looking at that back in 1987, it looked much different than it does on this end of things because we're actually not that far away from the end of that 25-year period. And in this period here, it's a quarter-century cleansing in which it had to get brought up into the world's screen of consciousness how far off track we are as a civilization. And almost everybody at this point knows that something is off, and yet very few people actually know what to do with it. And what we studied and what I believe about 2012 is that this is a tremendous opportunity, and it's a crisis, but it's a crisis that contains a rare opportunity to let go of the old ways and to begin a new foundation, a new world that's based on who we really are rather than who we pretend to be.
Wow, yes, that's beautiful. We still have a lot of hurdles to cross.
Yep, we're not there yet, but I feel very positive because in my astrology practice, I do 90-minute astrology sessions by telephone mostly with people from, well, since my book came out, with people from all over the world now. And so I didn't used to get a chance in the first 20 years of my practice to actually get a global picture, but now I'll have people calling me from Russia and Scotland and Ireland and all over the United States, and almost every single one of those people is saying to me, I know I'm being asked to change and I'm not sure how. And that message coming to me from all over the world now feels so powerful that it reminds me of the wave of transformation that we lived through in the 1960s, except much more global and not so polarized.
And also a lot more urgent.
Yeah.
You know, it's there's so many lines and things that are being crossed right now, and so many of them have to do with our disconnection from that which is alive, which is everything around us. Yes.
Yeah, there's a message that seems to be breaking out everywhere, and I feel that 2012 is a gateway, and it's a gateway. It's one of those rare periods in history where people's choices have more than the normal impact, and people's ability to transform will go much farther than normal. And because of that, there's a lot of fear, a lot of resistance that's aroused at the same time, which is always the case in history. When civilization came to an end and a beginning, which has happened before in many different times and places, there's always these eruptions of fear and panic and talk of apocalypse. But at the same time, there's also the seed, this opportunity to evolve in a whole new way beyond the familiar limitations and confines of the past. And that's what I feel that 2012 is. It's a crisis that contains a marvelous opportunity for people to really grow out of the life that never really fully worked and claim a path of truth, a path of the soul.
Well, it seems that there is the beginning of the feeling that there's a shift away from the inauthentic and doing what we don't like, and becoming numbers in a machine, kind of a matrix-like existence, which is where we're headed. Towards being stamp numbered and like Patrick McGowan in The Prisoner, becoming a number.
Yeah, and it's an apt analogy that we've become numbers, we've become ciphers. Our life force has gotten plugged into a shopping mall, TV, tabloid existence, which is many steps removed from actual life. And the irony of this, Lance, and what makes it so interesting to talk about, is that I actually don't see a drastic disaster, change, crisis, apocalypse going on with 2012. Actually, what I see is much more underwhelming than that. I just see normal, real, simple life happening for the first time on planet Earth in many centuries in little pockets all over the world that grow and grow like puddles in a rainstorm until they reach out and meet each other.
Well, that's an interesting vision. And of course, many different people have different visions of what might be. As one person said that he's trying not to have visions just to not muddy up the waters, just to continue with your water analogy. But some of my guests talk about this being a repeat or a recycle of the Atlantis era, and that some of the karmic implications from Atlantis are carried forward, and we're resolving some of those, and that we're reaching another point very similar to that. Does that resonate for you at all?
Yeah, as I talk about in my book, I feel that the Atlantis set the main karmic downfall of humanity in motion, which is the elite few lording over the many. And when Atlantis went bad, it was because a small group of elite scientists set themselves up above everybody. And that created this major karmic wave, which I do feel has come full circle to the present time. And 2012, which can also be seen as the true beginning of the age of Aquarius astrologically, 2012 is the time in which that consciousness and power gets released from the grip of the few elite and spread out throughout the collective. And that's where I feel Atlantis has come full circle. What went wrong in Atlantis has had to go wrong again in our time until we could finally wake up to it and change it. And I do feel that things like the internet and a kind of a worldwide movement that doesn't really have a name yet, but can be felt, I feel that's the legacy of Atlantis.
Yes, very good. I feel very similar to that. When you take a look at the star charts for the various periods of time, have you what does that period of time, for instance, December 21st, 2012, is that a significant alignment of the stars?
I haven't studied December 12th, but what I've looked at is that there's a few different astrological indications of that began this year with a triple conjunction between Jupiter, Neptune, and Chiron, and that continue with a bunch of rare Venus transits between 2012 and I think 2015 or so. There are enough astrological indicators that point to a whole new experience being offered to humanity.
Wow.
And there were clues and inklings of this in earlier times. In the 1960s, there was some big clues about this where I think it began to leak in. Nothing in astrological timing events is ever a totally separate incident that has no precursor whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Everything is intersecting gears and cogs, like as if the universe were a gigantic cosmic clock, and it has gears and spring bars of all different sizes, and some of these things have been building for 26,000 years, and some of them for 40 years since Woodstock, since we're just about at the 40-year anniversary of Woodstock, and so it depends upon how you interpret all the different astrological data, but what it boils down to for me is that there's this tremendous window of opportunity that's opening now, and between now and 2012, it's going to continue to open, and there's these like energy blasts that are being given to like wake-up calls to jerk people out of their normal reality.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there seems like there's a global awakening that's occurring, and it's almost independent of the we can lump everything into the New Age movement, but really there's old people in it too, so it's partly the Old Age movement. But it's all of us that are learning how to connect from the heart with one another. Yes,
that's exactly what I feel, and being the father of a 11-month-old boy and a 6-year-old boy, it's very obvious to me that a whole new wave of evolution is happening on planet Earth right now, because these kids are so far ahead of where I was, and in some ways they're so far ahead of where I am now at age 54.
Wow.
And you're right on with an opening of the heart and a total unwillingness to fall for the same old crap.
Yes. Well, the indigos they started coming in, at least 100 years ago, but in major waves, they started hitting about 40, 50 years ago, and then there were more around 30 years ago. So there's been some time since these kids that are much clearer and much more connected to their source and to themselves have had time to develop and have kids, and some of them have grandkids.
Yes.
And I've heard some amazing stories about these kids that they're just coming in like little gurus, Yeah. Their little eyes are open and they look like little gods and goddesses, They're just so pure, radiant. And some of them are communicating with the soul that's communicating with the mother prior to even being impregnated, and having dialogues, and then there's the communication, the intuitive communication with the new soul while it's gestating inside. I mean, all kinds of trippy things are going on.
Yes, and I think it's a sign of accelerated evolution.
Yeah.
And we did pave the way for this. The world did change radically in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Even though in the 1970s and 80s we came down with a collective case of amnesia and pretended that the change didn't happen, it did happen enough to set something up so that the younger generations, the people now who are in their 30s, already take for granted that the change has occurred, and they're not even trying. At least a lot of the ones that I'm around, they're not even pretending or trying to fit in with that version of the world that in the 1960s many of us rejected. And I think we did build a bridge, and they don't have to work quite as hard to bulldoze that karma out of the way because we did that. And their field is more clear, and then the kids coming in, the babies and the children, my God, it's just, some of them are just so totally wise and completely free from getting caught up, with all the crap that their parents and their grandparents had to deal with.
Oh yes, all the abuse. I mean, we went through a couple of generations of, disenfranchisement, abuse, rebelliousness. We're just beginning to let up the shadow side of all the horrific things that our parents have done to us, and that seems to be starting to heal. But this all is coming up, and they are fresh, so they don't have to go through any of that, and then they don't have to climb the corporate ladder either. Frankly, I think that the corporate ladder is pretty broken right now. I think the rungs are just about in tatters. Thank goodness. A few friends of mine are counseling CEOs of Exxon and Mobil and General Motors and Obama and his staff. And what the reports that I've been getting is that a lot of these CEOs of these major movers and shakers of these multinational corporations have actually gone far enough up that rung of the ladder to begin asking some other questions about the whole thing. And there really are signs coming from both the kind of alternative consciousness artists and hippies and New Age spiritualists, as well as people that you wouldn't normally expect to be asking those kind of questions. I'm really seeing it at the top and the bottom of society, as well as moving laterally through a kind of brotherhood and sisterhood channels. Wouldn't that be wonderful? A wonderful vision to think that perhaps that many of the elite, if not most of them, would be able to have some kind of internal awakening and feel that connection with everyone else and start to come down from the concept that, the more you get, the better it is, and the more you hoard, the better, for you. We need to come together because we're all one spirit, and everything we do affects everything else. You can't separate anything out and say, well, that's not my responsibility.
Yeah, it's happening, and it like all change, it's happening slowly and grudgingly and with a lot of resistance and with a lot of fear, but at the same time, it still is happening. And I've noticed tonight already 2 or 3 times you've kind of alluded to the fact that a change is spreading through the world, but we don't really have a name for it yet or a concept. Yeah. And I think that's really a great thing, because I think that we kind of got concept saturated in the 1980s and 90s with the New Age movement, and to create a new ism before the organic version of what's happening really shows itself to us, I think is premature, and yet the thing that's happening is tangible. And I think the lesson there, Lance, is that all over the world we're being guided now to trust what we feel and sense more than what the media tells us or even what our minds might be telling us.
Absolutely. Wow, you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. No question about it. I host a Yahoo group on the Internet, and we were comparing notes today about that we've read thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of channeled material and, various mystical pages and so on and so forth, and we've all reached the point where it's all starting to sound pretty similar. And some of us have been in esoteric schools studying Gurdjieff and Ouspensky, and we've done our, the teacher guru thing, and this is not a time for that. It's almost as if there's something new. You said it so beautifully. and we don't know what it is yet, and it isn't what we think it is, and it's not what has been yet.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a real opportunity, a real invitation to really release our attachment to having to control our lives and gaining a kind of sense of security from systems and structures. As the systems and structures prove to be false and fail, there's a real opening there to step into a heartful vigilance. And I think this is the key, Lance, the way that I'm looking at the whole 2012 thing is that there's a marvelous invitation here for each of us to wake up, become vigilant, and trust the truth of our heart.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm finding, too, that when I'm able to go with the flow, synchronicity steps in, and all of a sudden, it's like a magical carpet ride. And it seems to you will understand this probably more than most, it seems to work in spirals of energy, where there will be a spiral, and it feels almost like riding a wave. And sometimes I'm aware of getting on the board and, trying to catch the wave, and then sometimes I'm not, but I just find myself on the board, and then it's like, oh, this is a wave. Oh, that's what this is. Oh, great, everything is magical. And there's no thought necessary. You don't have to worry about anything. It's just what the world is kind of unfolding in a magical mystery tour.
Yes, and I think I can relate to the experience you describe of catching myself, realizing that, I kind of slipped off the wave there for a while, and I got caught in some shadow realm. I thought things were worse than they are. My old demons and fears that I thought I dealt with in my 20s have come back again in my 50s, and then the next second, I'm back on the wave, and wait a minute, what really changed here? It's not like something really changed so much as that whatever part of me was invested in the old stuck stories had to get flushed out. It just had to get raised one more time so I could release it.
Yes, wow, that's so well said. Jeez, that's exactly how it is. I'm sure that a lot of people listening right now can relate to that.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of reports from friends and clients of mine who are really in the ringer. They're being pushed through the rinse cycle, and yet again, when people used to tell me those things as a Soul Level Astrologer in the 1980s or the 1990s, they were more invested. The karma was more entrenched. It hadn't gotten tenderized. It hadn't gotten pounded. And when they're telling me these things now in the new millennium, even they themselves are not taking their old stories seriously. I can sense it in their voice. It's like I've been married for 25 years, Mark. My husband just took off with another woman, and we have 3 children, and I have no visible means of support, and gosh, I'm just wondering what I'm supposed to do. And it's like it's like the same threats and fears and stories come up as ever used to, except that I'm really sensing that people are almost joyful about the loss of the old rather than taking it as a great tragedy.
Yes, yeah. Well, to be truthful, at the soul level, isn't it a relief when we're authentic and we tell ourselves the truth and we disengage from situations that really don't resonate or are not appropriate for us anymore? You talk about that in your book quite a bit about finding the one, and I'm assuming that you did finally find the one. I'm happy to hear that. In your wonderful quest, I enjoyed vicariously your many stories about there, so there is some spicy stuff in your book too. But it's such a relief sometimes when you do disengage, and it seems like earlier we were so much more invested in having something last. It was so important for whatever it was, a job, a career, a relationship. It had to last. That was the marker for success. And now it's like my last relationship, it came to an end, and the next day I was just laughing about it, and I was so happy I could almost dance a jig. You know?
Yeah, I do think that the old structures are giving way, and I was a peculiar case of this because since I was about 4 years old, I was searching for my one true love. Mm-hmm. And that was my passion in kindergarten, in third grade, in ninth grade, in my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s. And at the same time, I had a quest to fulfill my destiny as a writer. And I saw myself as a writer from my childhood, and I wrote and wrote and wrote like crazy. And it took me 20 books and 53 years before my first book was published, and it took me, I don't even want to tell you how many women I've been with in my life before I actually got to Marcella, and the story of how we came together at Harbin Hot Springs is going to be my next book, and it does speak to me that if you're willing to stay with your inner truth, regardless of what the evidence presents or the odds tell you, that you can actually create the life that you dream of.
Wow, I love it. I love it. It is the romantic journey, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a big part of my story because I'm a lover, and I've learned more things through love and sexuality than almost any other thing in life.
Well, I definitely related to that in my own life. I mean, I had to translate it into my own language, but love is love, you know, and it transcends time and barriers and gender. Yeah. My teacher is fond of saying that love is a messenger of destiny, and that destiny will use whatever messengers it can find to get through to a person who's stuck in a false existence. And if it can get through to you through your heart, through falling in love, it's because that relationship is a doorway, and you need to go through that doorway. Yes, absolutely. And, you know, people sometimes I hear them say, well, I'm afraid to fall in love, or I'm afraid to, because what if I get hurt? Well, you're going to get hurt no matter what, one way or the other. And if you don't live fully and don't experience life and go through it with all its ups and downs and wildness and craziness and passion, then you never get to experience all that. And from what I can tell, that's something that the soul needs to have as an experience in physical form, that it needs to immerse itself somehow. Not all souls, but particular ones, and maybe that's part of an overall course in soul evolution. You know, well, you go through 300 years of love-making, you know, and passion and terrible relationships, and then you get great relationships. But no, it's a wonderful thing, and it's a great teacher.
Absolutely, and I feel that I designed my book to use whatever method I could to secretly embed my tale with wake-up calls of under every word in my book. I'm saying, wake up, wake up, wake up, believe in your dream. Believe in your dream. Wake up. Yes. You can do it. And if that's falling in love, if that's following a creative dream, an artistic pursuit, a spiritual goal, a generous way to make the world a better place, whatever it is, moving to Montana and building a cabin in the mountains, whatever is in your heart's dream, that's what you owe the world. That's not going to make you selfish. That's going to free you. And for me, that has had to do with the path of relationship. I always sensed that there was a fuller, truer, deeper, realer version of love. And I stayed with every one of my relationships until it just self-destructed. And you talk about people having that fear of, if I open myself up again, what if I get hurt? I have the opposite fear. All my life, my fear is, what if that woman right around the corner was my one true love, and I didn't walk over there and introduce myself to her?
Yeah.
And that's my fear. My fear isn't getting hurt. My fear is failing to use all my power to make my dream come true. And if I've used all my power and that particular dream didn't come true, I can live with that. That's okay. But I just wouldn't be able to sleep if I felt that I didn't bring everything I had to the possibility of my dream coming true.
That's right. Well, you'd be sleeping alone if you... No, I love that. I'm
going to be sleeping alone tonight, too, because we're night weaning our little 11th-month-old, and I'm having Marcella sleeping in that room with him, and I'm going to sleep out in the living room.
Oh, my goodness. Do you have any magical stories about the kids? I mean, anything that you can share about the, some kind of, to indicate the difference of the kids that are coming in right now?
Yeah, let me think if I can remember this one about Sky. My first son, who's 6 years old now, Sky, when he was 1 year old, I was having a talk with him, and let's see if I can remember this one. I was talking to him. He said he was asking me about death, and I told him a little bit in death. I said that at death, the person's body dies, but the spirit goes on. And he looked at me very clearly and seriously and lucidly, and he said, I remember dying. And I said, you remember dying? And he said, yes. I said, what was it like? And he said, it was like an accident, but also on purpose.
Oh. Wow. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and the funny thing about him is, I was born in New York City, grew up in Connecticut, and when I talk about a movie theater, I'll say the word theater. But ever since Sky could talk, he couldn't have got this from anywhere in this life. He says, are we going to go to the movie theater? And he's always called it theater. Now, nobody in his family and none of his friends and nobody around him has ever used that word. And I'll call it ketchup, and he'll say catsup. And when he was 2, we were in a music store, and he went and he sat down at a trap drum set, and there was a jazz tune playing on the store sound system, and all of a sudden he put a drum fill in that was like about a 3-second fill, and me and the owner of the music store looked at each other and our jaws dropped. It was like this 3-year-old kid who was a jazz drummer, and I got a flash at that moment that in his previous life he had been a black jazz drummer from the Midwest, and later when he started pronouncing the word theater and catsup, it reminded me of the way some people talk in the Midwest, and so I think that he's in touch with that in some kind of clear way, and he might have been talking about his death in that lifetime when he was young.
Wow, it's awesome. Well, there's so much that's been learned now about soul families and how we incarnate with people that we've had relationships with, in other times and other places. And, of course, ultimately these are all happening in the eternal now, so there's no past and future. But these relationships sometimes... No, I lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere with that.
Soul families?
Yes. That we know each other prior to, so that there's an intentional choice of who our parents are. And obviously with somebody as spiritually evolved as you are, I'm just guessing that, you're going to bring some really dynamite souls and spirits into this world to, for whatever reason, because you can.
I feel so totally blessed. I tell you that it took me 50 years before I became a father, wow. And it was worth it, because the greatest moment of my life was the birth of my first son, which was at home, and the birth of my second son just 11 months ago in our home here in Vermont was just amazing, and I am just in awe of these children, and they've renewed my hope and faith in the world.
Wow. Well, that's wonderful, because we have a reason to make a change in the world, and I think it's important that we shift away from thinking about, well, we're going to be gone. Not everybody will be gone. The kids, the children, these beautiful spirits that are here will be here. And what is the legacy that we're leaving behind? What are we creating? What kind of world are we shaping for, those who come? Those people, they may be us. We may be incarnating into the future bodies, and we might have to live on this planet when it's, war-torn. So, these are all things that I think people are starting to think about.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm learning a lot from being a father, which has deepened both my writing and my Soul Level Astrology practice. And it was a whole missing element of my life that I always tried to get to, and then finally got there later in life, and it's quite amazing.
Isn't it strange how everything seems to happen in the perfect timing? It's not the timing that we expect or think it should, and as you go on, it seems like past 50, you begin to see that everything really had to have happened a certain way. And now you have your book coming out, and it's a wonderful book. I'm sure that your astrological practice is doing well. And you have a beautiful wife and 2 lovely children, and it couldn't have happened at any other time except for now.
Yeah, it's amazing, Lance. I worked, the things that I labored for so diligently for so many decades have all come true within the last few years, and it's really like all of those movies, where the person struggles, and I do feel that it's happened at just the right time, and
yes, in the nick of time. 2009.
Yeah, I got in just under the wire, I guess.
Yeah, you don't want to write a book on 2012 and 2013. It's a little passé.
Yeah.
But now you work so much in the mystery school, and the excitement of those days, you capture it so beautifully. It's just, it was the air was crackling with excitement when you described the sessions with Elias and Sarah. And the discussions, and they were absolutely mesmerizing. What has become of Star Genesis, and is Elias still with us? I know that Sarah is being channeled through, was channeled through Elias, and she's called Sienna now. Is that correct? Yeah.
Elias is still alive.
Elias.
He's in Hawaii. He has a new wife. He has 4 new children.
Oh my God.
He's still practicing astrology, still doing readings, and he and I alternate teaching teleclasses in Star Genesis, where I'll teach for a couple of months and then he'll teach for a couple of months. And Sarah died and is still in communication with him. He has a book of her letters, letters from Theana in the lands that follow death. That book is being rewritten, re-edited. It's going to be republished. Another one of his astrology books, Inside Star Vision, is going to be redone in the next couple of years, and a new book of his, The Christ Letters, is going to come out.
Oh, good.
he and I are writing a slim volume now on how to prepare for 2012.
Wonderful.
That book should be out before long. I have a chapter in an upcoming anthology called Transforming Through 2012. It'll be published simultaneously as a print book and an e-book. It's with a few other authors like Daniel Pinchbeck and George Norrie. And I have one chapter in there called Springing the Soul of a Stuck Species, which really encapsulates my feeling about 2012, and I'm interested to see what the other writers have to say. That book should be out within a couple of months. And I still do Soul Level Astrology readings, and I have a free monthly cosmic weather report that I email to people. And can I mention my website?
Yes, I would be delighted to have you mention it. I want you to.
Okay. My website is markborax.com, MarkBorax. And anybody who wants to sign up for my free Cosmic Weather Report, just go to my website and you'll see all the classes that we offer and the written materials as well as the Cosmic Weather Report. And I'm still in touch with Ellias. I work closely with him, though not as closely as when we were both living in Santa Cruz in the years that I write about, which really was a high point of my life and certainly of my mystical training. Those 7 years burned so brightly, even at the time, that I saw psychically then that someday the whole world was going to get in on what I was experiencing. But I didn't know how. I didn't realize it was going to be through a book that I wrote.
Yeah.
And the story lived in my heart in such a deep place that I tried for years to write it, and I would work on a manuscript for 1 or 2 years and then read it, and I see this doesn't work. I threw it out. A year later or 6 months later, I'd work again for another year or two, read it, see that it didn't work, throw it out, and I kept trying to get to this, and finally, thank the gods, I got to a version that I turned into a publisher who read it and said, we want to publish this, but you're going to have to rewrite about 90% of it because I don't think that you really have been true to your own vision yet, and you're going to have to clear a lot of clutter out of the way. And fortunately, the man who told me that was not only the publisher, but a writer and an amazing editor, and he gave me line-by-line editing of the first third of the manuscript, and he had discussions with me over it, and he pointed me in the direction where he thought that I needed to go to be true to myself. And I put the book down for maybe about a year when I was splitting up with Sky's mother and living on Vashon Island in the Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. I couldn't write, and then after I got over the breakup, I picked up his notes and began writing and saw that he was so on target that finally I could write this manuscript. And from that point on, it took about 2 years and another 2 editors and a bunch more drafts to finally turn that book in. So I am so relieved that I finally got that story out into the world and that I made the mystery school crackle for you and come so alive. That's just exactly what I was trying to do.
Oh yeah. I am so thrilled to it's such a rare treat to have something just pop out like that and to just be completely drawn into it and feel the excitement. I mean, you captured it on paper in words and it's tangible. I mean, I was hanging on every word that was being said, and I wanted to find out what the mage was going to say next, and it's just such a fantastic experience, to go on that journey.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that it worked for you.
Yeah.
And in the writing of it, I poured everything I had into trying to turn. I set a near impossible task for myself, which was to turn astrology into a gripping, page-turning adventure that nobody could put down, even if they had to go to the bathroom. And that's what I kept in the forefront of my thought. Like, I can do this. I can do it. It's not there yet. I got to tear away these 20 pages. I can do it. I can do it. And to stick to the truth and yet write it like it was a novel was a very powerful training for me that I went through. Fortunately, I had the benefit of 30 chapters of source material, which was the tape recordings I'd made of those 30 classes.
Yes.
And I transcribed those at the time into 30 printed chapters of about 15,000 pages each. Wow. So I had about 400,000 pages.
Good Lord.
Of material there. And so when I first wrote the early drafts, I was able to just make up things that I wanted Ellias to have said, and then when I got the book pulled together, I could comb through those 400,000 pages and find things that he actually did say and plug those in and get much more authentically the feel of his voice and the things we talked about. And then I took some poetic license to trim it all down and condense it, and make it more dramatic and really fine tune it. And he gave me a blessing.
I can tell, having done this myself. I mean, I could sense where you were really using a scalpel to trim away any trace of fat.
That's right.
Because I had to go through this process in my own book, and I'll send you a copy if you'd like one.
Sure.
I went through the same process, and it's just a process of honing. Well, Michelangelo, I'm not saying that our books are comparable to the works of Michelangelo, but on our level, yes, they are. But he chipped away what wasn't David. And, that's kind of the writing process. You're chipping away what isn't necessary.
Very much so. And the journey was so deep. The process of writing was so deep for me that first I lived those experiences, and they had a phenomenal, lifelong, life-changing impact. But then 20 years later, I relived those experiences for 3 years of writing, and it was powerful. Yeah, very powerful. That chipping away everything that wasn't David.
Yeah. I have to ask you about somebody that you've known, just briefly, because, we'll be running out of time pretty soon. And you knew Ray Bradbury, and he's one of my favorite authors. I just adore Ray Bradbury. He seems like he would be one of the nicest guys in the world.
He totally is. I can't claim an intimate friendship with him, but I have been to his house. I spent a day with him. We clowned around. I spoke to him on the phone a lot in those days, and he taught me that world-famous, millionaire, successful writers can be the most hospitable, childlike, exuberant, friendly, generous people of all. He was the exact opposite of condescending. He was like a little kid. He showed me his comic book collection. He showed me his souvenirs from the World's Fair and his movie posters that movie stars had signed when he was younger. And he became my literary godfather because he stepped into my life at a time when my faith in my own writing ability was low, but he had no question about me being a writer. And it was a brief and memorable friendship that I had with him that definitely recharged my battery and helped me to believe in myself.
Wow. Well, you had quite a journey, Mark, and I certainly can't sing enough praise for your book. We're just about out of time. Is there a little bit that you'd like to share with us? Anything in particular that you'd like the audience to know about anything in particular about 2012 or?
Well, again, check my website because every month I write a cosmic weather report about what's going on. MarkBorax.com, MarkBorax. I'm writing a new book. It's going to take a while before that one comes out. And what I want to say directly to all of your listeners is this is an amazing time that your soul has chosen to be alive on planet Earth, and don't throw it away.
Wow, that's beautiful, Mark. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I feel like I know you you're just like a kindred spirit, kind of rebellious, and you have so many wonderful qualities that I admire. And I wish you the best on the book and with your astrological work, and I'd love to have you back sometime again, too.
Thank you, Lance. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I'll be happy to come back on your show.
All right. Thanks again, Mark. And,
okay, thanks a lot, and good night.
And good night to all the listeners. And be sure to listen, stay tuned for Jim Gilliland's show because it's always exciting. All right, good night, everybody.